All right, so welcome everyone. We're here for the Multi-Eco community meeting. Normally this meeting takes place live and in a room, and this time I guess we don't. But that's the amazing part of this OHBM, right? So we have to try new things and try new technologies. With me in this moment on screen, more or less, because I cannot see, but I hope you can, is Dan from the NIH. I'm Stefano from the Basque Center of Cognition, Brain and Language. Briefly, what are we going to do today? So today we would like to invite you to think about the possibility of having and the possibility of improving a multi-eco based community. We're talking about multi-eco bold fMRI especially, although we can be open to other multi-eco kind of applications. We are going to, first of all, sorry, I have to take some notes. Yes, so we're going to hear a bit about what is multi-eco, just as a quick refreshing for everybody, and just a quick introduction for who is not so much into the topic. Then we're going to hear a bit about the data, and then I'm going to ask you folks, you guys, to come on screen or at least chat with us if you're too shy to come and show your face. Because what we would like to come out from this hour is to understand if we can make this community stronger, make this community a bit more interlaced, a bit more present. And we're going to discuss exactly that. I'm going to be the moderator for the next hour, but for the moment, I'm going to leave the word to Dan.
Okay. So Stefano gave a good general intro. Hopefully, I think one of the main questions we have just starting out is that it would be a good sense to get to know the people here. Whether I recognize a bunch of the names as people who are active in methods development, but I'm sure not everyone is. So hopefully the polls will come up soon. But one of the main questions is simply of the people here. We don't want to sort of talk above everyone, but we don't want to sort of waste time going on introductory stuff. So it'd be good to get a general sense of if there are a lot of people here who really don't know much about multi-eco, and then we can sort of pause a little bit and bring everyone up to speed. But there's the poll. Is that the first poll that just came out? Don't know much yet. Okay, so hopefully people can fill out the poll, and if we have a number of people who really don't know much yet, we do want to take a step back and make sure that everyone is at least to the level of sort of knowing what the heck we're talking about. Because like we said, we really want this to be a welcoming community, and number one welcoming thing is making sure people know what we're talking about. Okay.
So I see that more or less we have a lot of primarily users of multi-eco, somebody that is working on multi-eco fMRI methods and developments, and some folks that know what it is but never used it. So
I will say also, I posted a link to the Etherpad for this, where is a place for everyone to sort of give a bit more background who you are. If you want to enter your name and information there, it's very welcome. And the agenda here, we do have some things we hope to get through, but it's very freeform and structured. So hopefully, if people have things they want to bring up, that's either the chat window here or the Etherpad documents are a good place to bring that up as well. I also want to say that we are being represented by two guys right now, but the group does have a little bit last minute scheduling things ended up making that the way it is now. But regardless of who you see in front of you, we want to say that we are welcome of everyone from every background into this group. And we hope everyone does feel welcome. And if you don't feel welcome, please try and feel comfortable enough to contact one of us and explain why, so we can make you feel welcome.
And if you have any suggestion on how to improve our welcoming abilities and diversity in our Tedana group, we would be happy to hear your feedbacks about it.
Okay. Given this,
Right.
given there's at least one person who doesn't know much, should I do like the 1 minute intro of multi-echo, or?
Go with the 1 minute multi-echo introduction.
Okay, the 1 minute multi-echo introduction. So when we normally collect fMRI data, we excite the protons, then you wait a bit of time, and then you collect data after a certain echo time. That time is defined by when we think bold fMRI should be maximum, but it's a bit of an estimate. So instead of waiting, we could essentially, as soon as we've excited the protons, we can collect an echo, then collect another echo, then collect another echo. And what that gives us is we get to get a little bit more sense of how the signal evolves over time. So, for example, if we have, 3 echoes of different sizes, three bunny rabbits, keeping the theme of the Open Science Room, and we know the first echo is going to bump, the first echo is the largest signal, the second echo is the middle signal, and the third echo is the smallest bunny rabbit. So if we're seeing a signal that is bold weighted, then in theory, then what we typically see is the biggest echo might jump the most, the second echo might jump a little bit less, and the third echo jumps less. So that type of signal is showing us something that is likely bold weighted. But if 3 different size bunnies jump the same amount, then it's unlikely that it's bold weighted and it's more noise. Now, how we can separate the bunnies that separate in a bold weighted pattern versus a non-bold weighted pattern there's many methods and there's many people in this community that might represent it. But as a basic concept, that's the general idea, that by collecting multiple echoes, we can we have a tool that lets us empirically try and separate a little bit more of what's signal and what's noise. So that's the 1 minute intro with bunnies. Okay, so yeah, I was planning that, but I need to know there's at least one person who might have benefited from that. Okay.
So I don't know if it was the balloon, but we gained like 10 participants, so great job. That was a great explanation as well. So that's great. Do we have somebody from Tedana that can explain us very quickly what Tedana is and what Tedana does? Or it's up to you again?
Okay. Is it possible to share a screen?
It is. You have to go on basically your face and some buttons should pop up and then you can share the screen.
Okay, let me see that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Share screen. I will.
And I guess we have to ask Katie to then make the screen bigger and thus smaller.
I am on it.
Thank you.
Okay. Screen sharing. So can people see the screen right now? Okay. So what I'm doing here is 2 things. One, I'm going to explain a little bit about what Tedana does, but also show that some of the work we've done in the past year. So originally, Tedana is software. It is a program that uses one method of multi-echo, one method to remove noise. You can install it. There's all sorts of options on what you can do with the program. The basic concept is you input your data, you calculate a bunch of fits to it, you convert the data into ICA components, and then for each ICA component, you decide whether it fits more or less to the that bold model versus non-bold model. Think back to the bunnies. Or you can remove signals that are non-bold weighted. So that's the basic idea of the core functionality. But as we design the software, we try to make it as modular as possible so that a lot of these tools and a lot of these steps can be run independently and can be used for different purposes. And hopefully over time, we can expand methods beyond just this one approach into this code base. But we also want to explicitly state that our goal is not to be every single denoising method under one roof. What we have been doing in addition in the past year, particularly in response to this last year's meeting, is Tirana is also a page of resources. So several of us, this was led by a coding sprint we had last November, led by, this part was led by Logan Dowdle, so I want to give him credit here, but many people contributed. We built up the text of information on what is multi-echo fMRI. So if you're a new user, if you have someone who's the idea to this area, there's a lot of information on what's multi-echo fMRI. Here's the basic physics. Here's all sorts of equations. Why do people use multi-echo? If you're thinking about it, reasons to consider thinking about it. If you're acquiring multi-echo data, oh, you have a Siemens scanner. Here are some of the places you can get multi-echo sequences. If you have a GE scanner, here are some places you can get GE sequences. I have partial information on Philips, but I haven't added it yet. So if anyone has the Philips information they can add here, it would be greatly appreciated. That's also a note that we definitely want to go beyond just talking about, for the contributions here, one of the things we want to discuss today is even if you don't want to touch the Tirana code at all, we are hoping that a larger portion of the multi-echo community is excited and willing to contribute to this documentation because we're hoping we're making a resource that is useful to people beyond just Tirana. So again, like we're going through acquisition primary resource recommendations. We have a database of publications, and these are the number of echoes and echo times that are typical in publications, and you can actually look at the whole. Here's some key places to start, but most importantly, we have a list of every publication using multi-echo fMRI we can find, and I am sure I'm missing stuff. If we're missing your paper, please don't take offense. Please add it. So that's a big portion of what we've been working on, not code related over the last year. And as we continue this meeting, I hope other people here are interested in contributing in that part as well. So I will now close screen share.
All right.
Screen share off, okay.
Thank you very much, Dan. So I'm gonna share my screen now and just quickly, let me see, wait. Okay. Or not. Okay, let's do this. And then you should be able to see this. Yes, okay. I'm not gonna even try to put them full screen because otherwise it's gonna take a while and it's gonna be complicated. Okay. So just a quick recap of the previous meeting. We had 10 different groups from different regions of the world that were working on different aspects of the multi-echo Gould fMRI. One thing that we tried to do last year, and we see that some of the things that we managed to do up until now, was to basically build background resources. One was with the docs that you just saw and Dan showed us, and apparently that worked, and apparently it's also helping a lot of people, so yay. The other thing was to make the data a bit more modular in order to be able to integrate more approaches inside the code. And that's something that then, especially Dan and Taylor, managed to do during a hackathon that we had in November. So congratulations. We invited people to start data sharing on multi-echo. Luckily, I think that we didn't manage to do that yet, but that would be something that we can think about and eventually try again for this year. And finally, there was the idea of a community mailing list that started, and especially Joshua is taking care of it, sorry. And some of you should be subscribed, some of you not yet, but we're going to discuss about this later. So now for the upcoming half hour, 35 minutes, we'd really want to know what you think about this community, what can we do to improve it, and well, first of all, if we want to make one, because it's not given for granted. So the first thing that I would like to ask you people is what would you like to see as a main aim for this community? if we want a community for the coming years. For instance, sharing multi-echo, just create a community mailing list that works, or I don't know, improve a part of the multi-echo applications, or invest time and energies and et cetera, on a particular application of multi-echo. Then I'm gonna ask you if it's okay to use the Dana as a base for this community as it is already. I think that the Dana is a great project that is taken care of very well by 10, 11 contributors, active contributors at the moment. Dan, remind me?
About 11 active contributors.
Right.
Maybe even a little bit more, but right around, I'd say around that.
All right. But the Dana is not just code. It's also a community. It's also it can be touch base for us. And I would like to ask you if you like the idea of using the Dana as a community for the multi-echo development. If you have a better alternative, then feel free to propose one, and we can think about how to implement the best option. And then if you think there are aspects that we can improve in order to facilitate more community resources collaboration in the Dana, or in the better alternative that we're going to propose. So since we really want people to jump in this discussion, I would kindly ask you to, well, first of all, you can chat. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Probably Dan is going to disappear from the screen in a bit. Not yet, though. Don't leave me alone yet, just yet. But please, if you want to speak and come in on the screen, there's a little box that is ask a questions next to the polls. Please write your name, and so that we can register a list of people that want to come on screen. And otherwise you can just write a comment in the chat as well. And otherwise we will start calling up people on purpose.
So there are some questions coming up. So while no one else is volunteering, I'll try to answer some of the questions.
So those are the questions in the other part, right?
Yes. So there's one question: what are the recommended pre-design steps before and after Tedana? And it looks like several people are typing in some stuff. But what I'll say is, and this is, I think, worthy of discussion for the field, we have general senses of what works, but there really haven't been huge empirical studies on what happens if we tweak pre-processing steps. So I think a lot of our current recommendations are based on sort of our general understanding and what we've done that works, and less on we've done systematic evaluations. So if people are looking for, part of a project going forward, this is something to consider. In general, I think the idea is the less you do to the data, the better. But you do need. But generally, people so far, I think everyone's done motion correction. I don't know if anyone systematically tried not doing motion correction on low motion data, but there's no reason it shouldn't be possible. And certain things like how you interpolate, how you do spatial alignment beforehand matters. The biggest thing not to do is, because the 3 echoes scale with the time, the echo time, you don't want to do anything that removes the mean value. So you don't want to sort of bring all the echoes into % change from mean before doing next steps. But also pre-processing depends on what you're doing next. So for Tedana, those are the recommended steps, but there are other steps that might be less sensitive to sort of how you play with the time series.
So I see there is still no one that wants to come on screen and give us our chat with us, at least. So I might invite somebody, maybe Angie, do you want to come on screen? And also Stephan, do you want to come on screen as well? Write in the chat if you want to come on screen so that we know that we can add you. Well, mainly Katie can add you.
I have invited Angie. So if you want me to pick on somebody else, one of you will have to leave.
Okay.
So nose goes.
We're gonna have Dan back in a little.
Okay. So Stefan is also willing to join, but has a cold.
All right. Oh, sure. No, join. Even with the cold, it's fine. We will not judge you.
Alrighty. Should I boot Dan then? Goodbye. Alrighty. Stefan has been invited.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Angie
Cool.
is joining as well, or?
She has not responded to my prompt yet, but I can reprompt.
Okay. All right. So,
Hi, Stefano.
Stefan, right? Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, it's fine. I can work with multiple pronunciations.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna butcher a lot of names tonight, so it's bear with me. So if you want to just quickly present yourself, say what you're doing, and then there's many topics that you can jump in, and then we would like to hear from you about, especially what do you think about the Dana as a community, and where do you think we should move as a community?
Cool. Okay, so my name is Stephan Heunis, and I work with real-time fMRI analysis methods, and I'm interested in multi-echo to see if we can improve the quality of the real-time fMRI signal, like get some improved bold in real time. So with real time, I mean like processing the images as they are acquired. So in my case, in my most recent data, three echoes every 2 seconds. And I developed methods for that in MATLAB, and I've been wanting to port them into something resembling or the same type of infrastructure that the Dana has for too long. But that's still a goal. But it's basically multi-echo parameter estimation and then different combination methods in real time. And I'm currently looking at, I've collected my data and I want to run this method study to see how that affects the real-time bold signal in different regions. And all of this is geared, or at least this study that I'm working on is for people who want to use real-time fMRI analysis in clinical situations with fMRI neurofeedback, although I'm mostly interested in the methods. And then, so that's my background and why I work with multi-echo. But I'm also really interested in the community itself. Like I really enjoy having been like peripherally part of it. I haven't contributed much, but I've done created a few issues and changed 1 or 2 typos in the README like way back. So I like the community because it's very welcoming, in my experience, and people are really keen to help, which is something that I like in a community like this. And then also something that I would really like to contribute more to, that I would really like to see more of in Dana is tutorials. So that's something that I like doing, and I also like seeing in a resource like this. And it could be nice for people to jump into the code if you have like nice like Jupyter notebooks or something like that. That takes you step by step through it. I know there's in the read the docs. There's quite a there's one that's based one section that's based on an initial Jupyter notebook, I think. That takes you through how the decay works and the steps for computing the ICA components, etc. But I think it would be nice to have some tutorials that are like use case specific. So perhaps something like with task-based data, to take you through the steps of how to call it, but then also to display like what change it really makes. I think for some people, there's still a question like what does multi-echo actually help if you're not very intricately familiar with the literature. So it would be nice to have some tutorials, like interactive visualizations that one can more easily see how it's useful and how it's not useful. So
All
that's
right, thank you.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
In the meantime, Cesar joined us on the
Hi,
screen.
Cesar.
Hello.
And I would like to ask maybe somebody from outside of the current developers of the Dana, if they want to join us on screen, especially if they're actually developers or propose different methods, maybe Molly Bright or Benedikt Boser, if you want to come on screen and chat a bit with us, it would be great.
I'll leave.
In the meantime, you can stay for a bit more if
No,
nobody
one has to leave if another person.
Right.
So I'll leave. Thanks.
All right.
See you.
Thank you very much.
Let's keep in touch.
Hello, Cesar.
Hello.
Do you want to?
So my name is Cesar Caballero. I work at the PAS Center on Cognition, Brain and Language, same institution as Stefano. And basically, my interest in multi-echo is to try to give it another perspective, to develop new algorithms, new formulations, new ways of looking at multi-echo data. It's like most of the time we are interested in only optimal combination or multi-echo ICA or dual echo denoising, but what kind of information can we extract? I mean, other types of information that could be informative and could be useful to analyze fMRI data, and we are exploring these kind of things, and that's why I wrote on the notes that one thing that this community should ask internally is whether we want to embrace, and I think we want, but what do we need to embrace all other people that are working on multi-echo, fMRI. When I mean fMRI, I don't only mean bold fMRI, but maybe ASL or other kinds of functional imaging that collect data at multiple echoes. And also maybe having a perspective from a more physics point of view on how the data is reconstructed and the community on multi-echo anatomical images like QSM could be informative because they will help us to understand better the challenges that we have. So it's just that's why I wanted to open this point. Yeah. So what can we do in order to attract these people to join?
So I'm sure in the meantime, sorry, Molly joined us on screen. Welcome, Molly. I'm going to ask both of you, as you're here, and I know that you have strong opinions about it, at least that Cesar does. What do you think we could do in order to, well, actually, what would be a good first thing, a good first aim that we can move the community toward in the upcoming year or 2 or 3 years from now?
I get the sense. I get the sense that people who collect multi-echo data play with it and look at it and think about it and get engaged with all of this stuff that we're a part of right now. I think the big challenge is to convince people who haven't tried acquiring these data to try acquiring it and to get past that hurdle. So I mean, I don't know if that's something, I don't know how to deal with that, but to me, to address a lot of the things that Cesar just raised, and I admit I was fussing with technology, so I heard some of what you said. But I think that to have this richer understanding of what multi-echo can teach you about what you're imaging, you want to have a slightly broader community that are considering actually acquiring the data. So like, for example, full disclosure, I work with the two of these guys right now in a collaboration, and they collected data where it's not typical fMRI. It's data where we try to really drive systemic vasodilation from physiological challenges. And it turns out the multi-echo insight that you get into that data is just a little bit different than if you're doing kind of normal fMRI data collection. You see things in a slightly different way when you run the same types of sort of algorithms at your multi-echo information. So, you know, that's just because I like to have people do weird things with their breathing in the scanner, and that then opens up kind of new opportunities for what we might learn from all of this. I still don't understand it all. They understand it a little better than I do. But it's, yeah, if we can get more people to actually collect stuff that kind of extends what we're looking at, I think that would be what I would emphasize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Cesar.
agree with, sorry, can I talk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe replying to just addressing Molly's point is like what we need is more people to try it, and don't take for granted that it's gonna be better. But if you don't try it, you don't see the challenges. I mean, potentially it should be better, but it might not be the case. I mean, of course, we can see a boost. I mean, everybody acknowledges that there is a boost in the contrast to noise ratio, because essentially you are averaging the signal across the multiple echoes. And if you do it in an optimal way, well, you boost the SNR somehow. But whether the noising is better or not, it depends on many cases. And we need people with different paradigms, from like low level, I mean, simple paradigms, to physiology, to more cognitive. I mean, there are nice studies done at 70 in the basal ganglia with disease, that they could target diseases, but there are very few of them, and we need more. We need more, because otherwise it's like just a scattered observation.
Right.
I can just
because maybe people try, but then they don't report them. And it's this bias that if you have a null result or you don't see an improvement, then you don't report it. Like, well, that's an observation. This is science.
Molly, were you trying to say something?
That's all right.
Okay. All right. So actually, yeah, that could actually be something that we can put into that as something like a platform or somewhere where we can say, oh, we tried to do this and that didn't come out as we expected, but we still try to do this. So if you have a good idea on how to implement it,
I think that as a like the front-facing presentation of Tadana and multi-echo is that it's great and it works. And I would say that it doesn't always instantly make sense. It's not always the better option, and it's not always working the way it should right out of the box, particularly when you're going to try it in a new direction. And that should be the case, right? That's fine. But yes, I mean, I admit I don't know how much this conversation is available on the site at the moment, but just the things that have been explored are pending, aren't working, and we don't understand. Applications that seem like they could be cool but aren't bearing fruit just yet. To kind of better represent, well, I mean, that would represent my own experience with it. I see it's cool, it's interesting. I think there's merit to collecting more information and then figuring out how to deal with it over time. But it's not obvious exactly what I'm doing with that information right off the bat. Like, is it definitely going to improve my understanding of what I'm looking at? So yeah, I would say there are some people that are kind of, I don't know. Hi, Pinar. So I think like I've run into some pushback with multi-echo at my new institution. There seems to be an opposite camp, which is that why would you spend time getting multi-echoes? You should just scan as fast as humanly possible, and that will help you more. So, I mean, they're not wrong. We're not wrong. It's that probably there are times when something slightly beats out the other approach, or depending on your question, one thing does edge out the other. But yeah, talking about all that stuff might help people feel more able to just try it, as opposed to, well, I tried it, didn't work, and I'm not going to do it again kind of thing. But I'm not really sure.
That's great, thank you. So I'm going to ask actually maybe Cesar to leave the screen if it's possible, unless you want to jump in on something else. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I would like to invite Benedikt, if it's possible, mainly because I would like to have Molly and Benedikt at the same time and ask you another question, because I don't know if it's possible. Katie, can you? Okay, great. So Benedikt has been invited. So I'm starting asking you, Molly, and
okay.
Hello, hi. Okay.
Hi, I wasn't sure how to. It was an invitation only. Okay, now I got it.
It's all right. I'm going to ask the two of you because actually, from your laboratories, from your previous research, you actually introduced different methodologies with multi-echo, right? Especially Molly the 12-echo approach, and Benedikt with mapping, right? The non-linear approach to multi-echo, right? And I would like to ask you, do you feel comfortable on working on a community with the Dana that is actually promoting different methods? Do you think the Dana could, are you using different bases for your methods? Do you think that the Dana could help you introduce your methods inside the community and these kind of things?
Go for it.
All right. I think I'm sort of a legacy guy here. So, I mean, I think as a disclaimer, I should say, I'm not actually working much with multi-echo myself, haven't in the past 10 years even. I'm still around to encourage people to use it because I very much subscribe to what Molly said. You know, it's a great technique, especially if you work at 3 Tesla. And I can only encourage anyone who's doing sort of don't take that as an offense now if I say standard neuroscience, but if you run a sort of an EPI experiment that is sort of standard resolution that maybe is no higher than 2.5 millimeter or so, you should really go for it and try. And this is, I think, my main mission, that I still try to encourage people to use it. I try to educate them about it. But I'm done with the methods development, right? It's now in the hands of very capable people like the fMRI have a good sequence on it. The MGH has a good sequence on it. There's a couple of others, of course, with the other vendors. I don't know what the sources are, but I keep watching the space because it's a personal interest that has gotten pretty deep, you know, during my PhD when I did this stuff. But I'm not an active user myself, not active developer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in a similar camp, I guess. When I was actually elbow deep in weird multi-echo methods development, that was a while ago. So now I rely on people like Stefano to actually do the work, and we just have high-level talks about what does it all mean. So I'm not sure how much I can add there. I would say I have become, since that paper, I've become slightly better at statistics, but mostly much more aware about statistics, and only slightly better. So I have this, I think, a very healthy respect and slight fear of doing things that I don't fully understand with data, where, especially if you're going to do a very simple experiment, something like a resting state scan, everything you do can have all of these knock-on consequences, and you can squint and see things that may or may not actually be there. And that's like, yeah, that bothers me. So I guess my only hesitation with doing more complex or data-driven decomposition approaches like in Tadana is that at the end of the day, you do something to your data that I don't fully understand the repercussions of. And that's something that we've talked about a lot. Like, you end up removing lots of variance, and there may be knock-on effects. So I think I still struggle with fundamental statistics. I will always struggle with fundamental statistics. That is not my strength. But it's something that I think about and I worry about when I start to use methods that I didn't develop and aren't super simple.
All right. Thank you very much. I would like now to ask Molly to leave. Thank you very much.
No problem. Bye, guys.
Cass,
I want balloon bunnies. I think I'm on here for balloon bunnies. If Dan promised them, I think I get 2 at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. And if we can invite Cass on screen. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask, because actually, so Cass brought up a very good point, which is the fact that it still seems too risky to apply multi-echo on a real clinical study. Hello, Cass. So I would like to ask the two of you now, why do you perceive it as too risky for a real clinical study, if that's the case also for Benedikt? And what would you suggest us to do in order to make clinicians be more comfortable with using multi-echo approaches and collect multi-echo data?
Oh, I was about to interrupt and say, what's risky about it? I mean, in the worst case, you just take the echoes, sum them up, and you proceed and do the normal way.
So to give like some context, I came across multi-echo a few years ago when I was doing my PhD, and Mara Chetiniani, who was part of a paper that said, oh, multi-echo is more effective than other methods for denoising and stuff. I was a big fan of it. And then when I moved to Oxford, I started talking about it, and people, this was only 2 years ago, right? People were like, no, I've either not heard of that, or no, I don't think it's necessary. So one person who has now left Oxford, and I think he's gone back to Dundas, he did an amount of pilot work looking at the different echo times on, I think it was just some, like, I can't even remember, some behavioral tasks. I'm pretty sure it was a behavioral thing, like different echo spacings, which would, like, what was good for getting some amygdala activity and what was good for other regions and things. So he did a fair amount of pilot work and presented it at an internal meeting, and still there was no uptake. And then another, so this happened just before I joined. And then another study, someone who I saw was on the list earlier, but I think they may have dropped off. He managed to get his PI to commit to doing a multi-echo like sequence in their study. And it got to the end of the study and the results weren't looking as was expected. And the thing that was the kind of not quite the blame, but the finger was pointed towards the multi-echo. You know, despite the fact that it was a slightly different experiment, a slightly different combination, like clinical population, things like that, the multi-echo was a thing that people were less familiar with, because there was only about 3 of us across the whole of the department who were promoting it. So that's kind of left a bit of a salty taste in a few people's mouths. And then with my own PI, we managed to get it to go, okay, we'll do multi-echo for the resting state, but for the task activation, we won't risk it, because we know the sequence works and we know the paradigm works. So why change something, you know, if it's not broken? So I think, like, what I would love to see is something like developer relations, like DevRel, and you get in like programming, where people are doing more active work to promote multi-echo, to support the people like us that are trying like desperately to get our PIs to do it. And equally, like something like a big multi-center paper where we run, like, we've got so many paradigms we could put it through, and we could see, like, actually be able to show people, like, no, because we've tried it with this paradigm and we do get the signal boost. And then the thing about like just do an average combination of the echoes and things, people are like, well, no, because the echo that is optimal for amygdala isn't the average of all the other ones. So it's not actually a fair trade-off to say, well, we'll just average them or we'll pick the middle one, because we're not optimizing any longer for amygdala. But then in the same breath, everyone always wants good coverage across the whole brain anyway. So that's a bit of a mute point. Yeah, I guess that's kind of just where I'm coming from on it. Is like I'm really like, the theory is all great and I'm down for it, but we're not the people who are making the final decisions, and we don't have the funding to do the work that people would need to find it convincing in where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Cass.
So may I ask, so what do you think would be the best starting point for convincing the clinicians then that it is a good thing, or that is a safe thing with at least no loss? I think that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
Equivalent or better. I think that is what we would have to show them, with no extra work, not too much extra work at least.
I think even if it is shown,
you mess up something along the pipelines, of course, it makes the whole process more fragile.
Yeah, and that as well, like FSL, right? If it doesn't come as part of FSL, then it's difficult to convince anyone at Oxford to do anything with it. So even like doing, doing what I was doing with like some fMRI prep and stuff was seen as a bit of a slap on the wrist. What you're doing, not using FSL. So one, help us integrate it into FSL. Two, I think even if there was a big like multi-center paper, until people are actually trying it up on our own magnets with our own everything else, I think people are going to struggle to adopt it. So what I think would be really great is if there was like I don't know who would fund it, but like, let's maybe do something multi-center, but like incorporating something. It needs to be funded, because it needs to be not coming out of some PI's research grant that they already know how to use in another way. And if it's funded, it needs to have postdocs' time attached to it. We do what we can to try out new stuff, but it's always on our own necks.
So what do you think of the work coming out of Cambridge? I mean, Valerie Vaughan's, she's been doing a lot of psychiatric applications, and I think Pantic, while he was there, has of course been really pushing it.
Yeah.
We're using it by default now.
Yeah. Cambridge and Oxford are different beasts, and sometimes intentionally so, by design.
Figured. Okay.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of, I mean, it's they Oxford don't like to. Anyway, I won't say anymore. But it's.
Sorry, so I don't want to interrupt this discussion, but I wanted to call another couple of people before the end of the hour, and then just as a general collection, close the session. But thank you very much. You gave us very strong pointers, both of you, and basically you asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. One thing that I'm going to ask you before you leave is, do you think it would be a good start for in any case, getting acquainted with the data, a collection of multi-echo data? So maybe being more clear on where you can already find multi-echo data so that you can maybe get acquainted with them and then work with them.
For me personally, that's not something that would hold me back. Like if I wanted to find some, I know where I could look, and I've got no hesitation about being able to implement the stuff, the pipeline as it exists. So it's not, as I said, the hesitation is not from the postdocs and the ECRs, it's from the PIs. So perhaps if there were data sets that were in existence that we could do a comparative on, like, so there's a normal single echo, and then there's the same paradigm with the same participants in a multi-echo, and we can show them, that might be more convincing. But just having multi-echo in existence, I don't think by itself would do the job.
Okay.
We'll get there though.
All right.
We'll get there. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
For coming on screen. I think that you will get balloons at a certain point. We don't know how, but you will get balloons.
Through the post is fine. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I would like to call, if it's possible, a person that is actually quite new. Giulia Baracchini, do you want to come on screen? And I'm going to ask also Joshua. Joshua, do you want to come on screen? Or Logan? One of the two. Okay. Actually, I think I'm going to insist on Joshua. Sorry. But if you can come, and if we can invite also Giulia. Thank you very much, Katie. So they have been invited. Somebody's popping up. Hello.
Hey, you got me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But I invited you up because I would like to... you're the one that is taking care of the multi-eco community mailing list at the moment, right?
Yes.
So I would like to ask you to just quickly... Hello, Giulia. Hi.
Hi.
So, okay, I'm actually going to start with Giulia at this point, just because... So, Giulia, you're actually not in the community yet, right?
No.
Not yet, but not in the community at the moment. So, and you're a PhD student, right?
Yeah.
That is starting playing with multi-eco data.
Yeah.
So one thing that I would like to ask you is, how do you perceive this community? What do you think we could do in order to help cases like yours in order to become more acquainted with multi-eco data and with the community? And then I'm going to ask just straight after to Joshua if you can explain us a bit more about the community mailing list. But let's start with Giulia.
Okay. So yeah, I'm a first year, so I just started digging my hands into multi-eco data. And in our lab, we're actually collecting multi-eco data over 2 sites. So here in Montreal, we're using data from Cornell, which is New York, and in Toronto. And both data sets were actually are collecting data with multi-eco. And I haven't been personally pre-processing the data myself, but I've been using multi-eco data, analyzing functional connectivity and both single variability. And what I can say is that we have multiple projects actually right now comparing multi-eco with just like using one single echo pre-processing and showing how having multi-echo data is actually benefiting our results or what we want to show. And we hope to have this paper published soon. And in general, what I can speak for Roni, which is my lab mate who has pre-processed the data. So what we actually are really grateful for the resources that are out there because it was really easy to follow the documents and the documentation on GitHub. So that's great. One thing that maybe we were thinking of, and also I think Roni typed the question, was whether there are any community standards or maybe any guidelines in terms of what is actually considered when we analyze, for example, both single components. What do people usually consider as a good number, or like any guidelines or sensors, again, that could be adopted across different sites. So that's what I have to say. But otherwise, I think it's really great. And for me, personally, again, that I haven't actually pre-processed data myself, was super easy to follow. And yeah, so thank you for putting that together for sure.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. So one reason for which I called you was also because I knew I could pronounce your name. So I'm sorry if I called the wrong person in the lab, but you know, it was easy to. But all right, thank you very much. I would like to ask you to leave the screen now, and I would like to invite back Dan.
Yep.
And in the meantime, Joshua, if you can tell us a bit about the multi-eco community mailing list.
Sure. So we started the mailing list, I think maybe about last year around this time, and we've been sending. We've purported to send it out monthly, and we've not sent it out more than monthly. So if you're worried about a sprawling inbox, that won't be a problem. And we're usually trying to let people know kind of what's going on when we have new releases, or if we find a bad bug. We were excited to send out a newsletter talking about our overhauled PCA after our hackathon this past November, and just generally keep people in the loop. I think that part of the idea of this talk was to just kind of get a sense of the community and see if there might be interest in expanding the newsletter or modifying its contents. And if you're interested in seeing that, please leave some comments on Etherpad so that we can take your suggestions and engage with you on that. And I guess the other bit is do check your spam folder, because unfortunately many mailing letters get stuck there. I would not regard our newsletter as spam. I think it has good stuff, but I'm biased because I write it. Let's see. I think that's about it.
So actually, you almost answered the question that I was going to ask now, which is, I think it's quite easy to make it a bit more, not only centered on the software of Tedana, but also maybe make it a bit more of a tool for the whole community. And do you think it's easy to, maybe we can ask some people around, maybe already that are taking part in this event, if they would like to join us as volunteers and give us a help on the community mailing list?
Yes, and if you feel like there's some sort of barrier to contribution, you can pop into our Gitter channel, which I think has been linked somewhere, and you can introduce yourself and say, hey, I'd really like to help, but I'm not sure how, and one of us will get to you and let you know how we can help you help us, basically. And if you want to look at the old mailing, if you want to look at the old emails, there's an archive of the mailing list, and I'll try to dig up a link after this, so you can kind of see how they've looked before, and that can help inform like what you would like to see more of.
All right. Thank you very much, Joshua. So we're almost at the hour time, so I guess we kind of have to wrap up. I would like to invite everyone that is listening to this, that is participating into this session, to leave. Now that the button has changed, so now there's the Gitter link in the button. But if you can, please add your name and what you're doing and why you were participating in this event in the Etherpad notes, it would be great. Maybe we can put the Etherpad link in the chat. And otherwise, come in Gitter and present yourself. Dan, I think you have a lot of balloons to make.
That's my pleasure. If I have them on me, I will make you a balloon animal when I see you. May that be soon. Some things I do want to add based on some of this discussion. In the chat, there's a bunch of discussion on sort of how to push back against some of the concerns in the past. I think the big thing is a lot has changed in the last few years. The biggest change that we really haven't discussed is even 3 or 4 years ago, if you wanted to do multi-echo on the sequence, you had to call somebody up and get a pulse sequence from them. Now I think all 3 vendors have pretty much, either with work in progress sequences or main sequences, but you can get a functional multi-echo sequence on any scanner. And that really is a change in the last few years. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of us, are a lot more excited about it now than a few years ago, because it used to be, multi-echo is easy, just call up Joe and get the sequence from them. But we're past that point now. And I think that makes a really big difference in getting buy-in from institutions. So someone who tried to get a multi-echo running 5 years ago is going to have a very different experience if they try to get it today. I'll also promote, we are having a symposium. It's midnight East Coast time on Friday, 5 a.m. in Europe, and some reasonable time in Asia. So
it's 3 a.m. UTC, 4 a.m. UTC, right?
So that's covering a lot of our work. And it'll be recorded later, so feel free to watch it at your own leisure. In my talk, I do cover a lot of these questions on sort of, balancing sequences. So I'll self-promote a bit there. And if anyone has, the other thing I'll mention with contributing to documentation, we made a decision that it's all hosted on GitHub, and we figured that we actually want to encourage people to use that interface. But that's a decision that can be reevaluated. And if you have something to add right now that you don't want to do through GitHub, and you just want to contact us and saying, please add this text, we're happy to add. We want to sort of lift up the boats and encourage people to get comfortable with GitHub. But at the same point, we want information on the website. So if you have something to share, please contact one of us and we'll get it there. Oh, so where is the symposium hosted? It's the HBM Symposium. It's on, I think it's called more echoes is better. It's it's gonna go live sometime Friday night or Saturday.
So yeah, it's definitely gonna go live on Friday. The name is 2 is better than 1, and more. Oh, sorry, no, wait. I had it. I lost it. Oh my god. But yes, the title starts with 2 is better than 1, and then there's multi-echo in the title. So just look up for it, and you will find it in the program of the OHBM. And all right. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for joining me on screen. I guess it's a wrap up. Oh yes, 2 is better than 1, and many are better. We are probably gonna see some of you at the symposium. It's gonna be, Dan is gonna be there, Angie's gonna be there, Cesar is gonna be there. I'm probably gonna be there if I'm not sleeping. But thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for your feedbacks and your ideas. I think we really learned a lot this year, Dan, right? I think it was very interesting. And
I'm going to have to go through this chat and listen to this again, or have someone else do that again to update all the notes, because there's a lot of information there.
Indeed.
And thank you for Josh and others for updating the Etherpad as we were going along.
Thank you very much, yes. And I guess it's a wrap up.